They gave us the cook's tour. We didn't believe it. Could you blame us? He gave us the cook's tour of the underground. And when we saw modern computers, graphic displays, color television, huge panels of displays, and a few other things, and we were there half a day. If you watch color TV for half a day, you quickly get the idea something's wrong. Very, very wrong. Jet aircraft? We didn't have those things in 1943. The Germans did, but we were still working on them. But they weren't large ones, or modern ones, and not commercial transports. Many other things. We were convinced. And he told us we had to go back to the Eldridge. They would send us. We had to destroy the equipment because the two experiments had locked up and created an artificial reality called a bubble in hyperspace. The ship was in it. They could not control it, but they could send us back. We asked, how could you possibly do that? So because we have complete control over space and time here, this Phoenix Project, which was its correct name, has solved the problems of space and time. We can send you right back to the decks of the Eldridge, and then you will then do whatever you have to do to smash the equipment. So they did send us back that same day. We smashed the equipment with axes. Eventually the generators started to wind down, the field started to dissipate. They do not instantaneously dissipate. We then went out of the control room at that point and saw the people buried in the decks and in the bulkheads. My brother, Duncan, for whatever reason, panic or whatever, we still don't know, jumped overboard before the fields had collapsed and wound up back in 1983. It's a long and difficult story, but he died there, was born into another body in 1963, the body having been sired by our same father in 1951 with his fifth wife. Get a little more into that, too. He was quite a man. In any case, he stayed there. I went back, and I gave my testimony. Eventually, Dr. Ben Neumann believed me. I stayed in the Navy until 1947, was assigned to Los Alamos, New Mexico, the famous Los Alamos laboratories, which nobody knew about until 45. I worked for the Navy. In 1947, they decided I knew too much, was asking too many questions, and did a number on me. They did probably the granddaddy of all burial numbers. I was accused of espionage. I was taken to Washington, D.C. The charges were dropped, but I was shipped out to Montauk, Long Island, the same base, but in 47 it was known as Fort Hero. And while it was an underground, there was no then operating Phoenix Project. There was a certain point on the base I was taken to, surrounded by armed guards, and said, you stand there in the middle and don't move. So I did. Suddenly I wasn't there anymore. I was back in the underground of 1983, Montauk. And I was told by Dr. Ben Neumann that he had no control over what was going to happen to me, but they're going to bury me into another family back in the 20s, totally brainwashed, after doing the age regression number on me and reducing me to the equivalent age of 1 and the equivalent size of a person of age 1, which is a small baby. They did it, alien technology. I became an Al Bielek in the Bielek family sometime in 27. I say sometime in 27 because the birth certificate says I was born March 31, 1927. There was somebody born by that name on that date. Before my legal mother, Albertina Bielek, died in a nursing home, she recalled in her mind wandering, as so often happens with older people at that point, and looked at me blankly and said, the baby is dead, isn't it? Well, there was only one child in the family. That was allegedly me. So I had largely my answer. I was a substitute for a child that apparently either had died or they had been told died. The adoption was arranged somehow through the years, and then they were brainwashed. Brainwashing does not last forever. You have to be hit repeatedly to keep it buried, because the subconscious will eventually, by some means, force those memories up to the conscious level, even if it's only in dreams. Well, I grew up again as Al Bielek, went through school, joined the Navy in 1945, became an electronic technician. I like the Navy. And after that was over, went to school, was an electronic engineer for 30 years, from 1958 to 88, retired in 88, having been a consultant most of those years. And it was in January of 88, after watching HBO one night at 4 a.m., seeing for the first time the movie entitled The Philadelphia Experiment. It hit me like an atom bomb, and I realized I had been part of that project. So I called up I had already met through other circumstances, my brother, and a person he was working with in the Long Island area. Called him and said, "Hey, I was part of the Philadelphia Experiment." He said, "Yeah, we know." He says, "What do you mean you know?" He says, "We've known it for the last month and a half. They have regressed Duncan under hypnosis to 1963 in his current lifetime, and then there's a quantum leap to 1943, and he was on the decks of the Eldridge, and there, as he recalled, I was I and a few other people he knew. He had never seen a movie or read a book, but under hypnosis he recovered it. Other people have turned up since to corroborate the story. I have no hard proof for the simple reason the government has denied not only does the experiment exist, or did it ever happen. Oh yes, it was an Eldridge. But their version of when it was launched and went into service is not quite what I remember, and everyone else connected with it remembers. And to this day they have said, I shall never have the records through a third party. They will never talk with me directly, nor my brother. But there are other aspects which I wish to get into. Don't have too much time. I'm going to state, among other things, there is a new book. You've probably seen others. The Philadelphia Experiment and Other UFO Conspiracies, because it was a UFO conspiracy, written by myself and Brad Steiger. We have them here for sale. If you're interested in buying them, a security man down there will take care of it. But many other aspects turned up as time went on. The Phoenix Project was very important to all of this because it was a follow-on for the Philadelphia Experiment. The Philadelphia Experiment actually was reopened in 1947. Van Neumann was asked to reopen it. And by 1953, he found the problems and had already produced an answer. It involved, first of all, the development of the modern electronic computer, which he is the father of, about 1951-52 with Dr. Goldstein. And a complete working system was delivered to the Navy, which was tested with no problems. Today we have such things as the B-1 bomber, everyone's heard of it, but do you know that the, shall we say, the third or fourth generation grandchild of the Philadelphia Experiment provides invisibility cloaking for the B-1, for the B-2, the stealth bomber, not the fighter, and also for our supercarriers today. The equipment did not die, nor did the project. It was resurrected in secret under the aegis of the Phoenix Project in 1953. They changed the name again. Phoenix Project, very briefly, involved research into mind control, invisibility, and time manipulation, time and space control, which was the final portion of the project, which started in 75. Precursor work was back to 63, and the hardware was functional from about 75 with many changes until 1983 when it collapsed. Under that aegis, many things were done with the Phoenix Project. I was part of it as Al Bielek, as was my brother, still Duncan Cameron. Same name both times. Father arranged a lot of things. And even though he died legally in 1981, we have reason to believe he lived on for some years after that. We were part of that project and many others, and we'll go into this in the workshop. The point I wish to make is the government has had many secret projects. Through the years, I'm sure many of you have learned little bits and pieces, sometimes through the supermarket tabloids, sometimes through friends that have been working on secret projects that can't stand it anymore and talk. I don't know if anyone really knows how many secret projects the government has had running and how many of them have involved extraterrestrials, particularly since the 50s. Eisenhower made his agreement with the Greys in 1954, and that opened the Pandora's box. Many underground bases, underground railroad systems, God knows what else. John Lear gave you something of an idea of what is involved. I don't think the two of us together, or maybe a dozen of us together, could really piece the whole picture together.